So we are into the geography discussion of GS-1 Mains 2025. When I look at the number of questions that were traced from our test series and strategic revision for Mains 2025 as well as Mission Mains 2026, in geography, I can claim with confidence that 7 out of 8 questions were from the strategic revision as well as the test series. That means, more or less every year we have a predictable manner that you see with respect to the question papers of mains. And there are any given day 3-4 questions which are bouncers, but most of the time it is common. Now with that basic aspect, when we look at the question paper, I would say geography question paper was more or less analytical, more or less unconventional, with some questions like remote sensing, some questions like offshore, onshore oil reserves, or something like non-farm primary activities. These are something new. Now let's look at the discussion. Now when you look at the fourth question, because question number 4 to 7 is geography and 14 to 17 is geography in GS1 always. How are climate change and the sea level rise affecting the existence of the islands? Discuss with examples. Now, when you look at 10 marker, you know that the page alignment is 2 sides. And here is the question. You can simply talk about the linkage between climate change and the sea level rise. You see that the introduction could be climate change and sea level rise. It is nothing but with the climate change there is temperature rise, with the temperature rise there is thermal expansion. Because of this thermal expansion you see sea level rise. That fundamentally means both are related concepts. And you know that whenever there is sea level rise, the mere existence on the islands become difficult. And always remember, my dear, in geography answer writing, maps become part and parcel, because there are certain components whenever you are writing geography. Always remember, you will have to have your maps, you will have to have your concepts clear, you will also have to show the answer in an application orientation. You cannot randomly write it in a subjective manner. Now once you talk about that, you can show the world map with respect to the existence, right? The world map with respect to where you are showing the islands of the nation. You see Maldives, you see Indonesia. A classic example is Indonesia shifting its capital because of the existing capital was sinking because of the rise in the sea level. Right? You look at Seychelles, you look at Comoros, you look at Mauritius. So you have many such islands which are facing its own, maybe Polynesian, maybe Melanesian, maybe Tuvalu, maybe Philippines, maybe Hawaiian. All of these islands you can indicate in the map. And once you discuss about this, definitely the factor is what you'll have to talk about, the factors of climate change and the sea level rise. And then straight away talk about what is the impact of climate change and sea level rise. Now always remember, whenever we are talking about impact in geography, most of the times you will have to see that you will talk about impact with respect to air, impact with respect to water, impact with respect to soil and land, impact with respect to the flora and the fauna, impact with respect to the human, impact with respect to the disaster profile. So if you are able to apply these dimensions into this particular question, it's easy. Because you see, because of the sea level rise and the climate change, you would have your coastal intrusions, you would have your saltwater intrusions, you would have the soil being polluted or the salinity of the soil increasing, or you would also have the submergence of the vegetation, the coastal vegetation. You would also see the agricultural activity, the coastal population, the livelihood, the disaster like floods. So you see, these are the impacts. But what is the norm whenever you are writing is, please remember, whenever there is a negative dimension in the question, always suggest measures. So till this, you would write multiple impacts, then straight away talk about the measures. In the measures, you can talk about the structural measures and non-structural measures to deal with such a problem and then conclude. The conclusion could be what? It could be either SDG 14 and 15 in combination, or it could also be maybe the Sailesh Nayak committee, which is talking about the coastal zone regulations. Right? Maybe you can conclude upon the Sailesh Nayak committee talking about the coastal zone regulation, where you can bring in a committee and also a policy kind of suggestion which is happening. So that is the answer for this particular question. That is the approach. Now when I look at the fifth question. The fifth question is talking about what are non-farm primary activities. That is one part of the question. How are these activities related to the physiographic features in India? Second part, and they are asking suitable examples. Now again, this question is interesting question, I would say, because when we see any primary activity, it could be either agriculture, allied sector, forest, mining. These are mostly what the primary activities, and this is farm and this is non-farm. That is farm and this is non-farm. And what are they asking about? They are asking about how is this related to the physiographic feature. The major physiographic features are what? How is it related to Himalayan structure? How is it related to northern plains? How is it related to the Deccan region or the Deccan plateau? How is it related to the central highlands? Even if you are not able to focus, but ensure that these three will have to be written when you are writing this. Now, when you straight away, the introduction, when you look at the page alignment, you know this is how the question is. You will start your non-farming primary activities. That you would talk about these three are the composition of non-farming primary activities, and this is what it is. And once you discuss about that, you can show a map, especially the India map, which is talking about what? What you need to represent in this map, you shows the areas of mining, especially the Chota Nagpur plateau. You show the areas of allied sector, that could be with respect to the livestock, that could be with respect to the cattle rearing, that could be with respect to piggery. And you also show some regions which are having high density forest. That could be Western Ghats, that could be Northeastern region, show that. And then straight away talk about the physiographic feature affecting or the physiographic feature determining non-farm primary activities. And then there you talk about one, the Himalayan structure, how are these activities present? Two, the northern plains, how are these activities present? Three, the Deccan plateau, how are these activities present? Four, the central islands or other physiographic features, how are these activities? That's how you can, that is what is the basic structure of this particular answer. And once you discuss about that, straight away get into conclusion. There is nothing much here. It is talking about what? You can simply say that non-farm primary activities will enable you to deal with the distress of the farming primary activities. This is what was suggested by the Ashok Dalwai committee. You can conclude your answer with this, because Ashok Dalwai committee categorically says the problems of agriculture can be dealt, or the solution to the problems of agriculture lies outside agriculture. Outside agriculture here fundamentally means non-farming primary activities. That's the basic understanding, and that is how you see the structuring going on. Now when you look at the sixth question, again sixth question is a very straightforward question, repeated question. We had such question in 2020 also. Ecological and economic benefits of solar energy generation with suitable examples. Now when you look at this particular question, it is asking you about what is the impact of solar energy, that is economic and environmental. You can straight away start off with the status of solar energy in India, because you see that solar energy has increased around 400%. If you want to specify that, if you don't want to specify, you can also say approximately 90 to 100 gigawatts of the composition that you come across, is seen to be coming from solar energy. That you can show, right? Now, this is the question you can introduce by talking about the status of the solar energy. You need not define what is solar energy, straight away talk about the status. And once you show the status, then again go for an India map. Go for an India map. And what is the map going to have? Go for an India map, and in this map you will fundamentally represent regions like Rajasthan, Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, Andhra, Telangana, because these are some of the regions which are known for or which are known to have large solar potential. Discuss that and then immediately talk about the benefits of solar energy. And there A, the economic benefits, B, ecological benefits. You know that renewable energy, solar energy, it is a renewable energy, it is creating employment opportunities, livelihood opportunities, reliable power, right? Cheap power, sustainable power, green power. Then when you talk about the ecological aspect, you see it is going to save the water resources, it is going to utilize the natural potential, it is going to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions from the thermal power plant, all of these dimensions. Then you should never forget about what is government doing in this line, talk about the governmental measures. And straight away conclude about either you can talk about Panchamrit or either talk about the carbon neutrality target by India of reaching carbon neutrality by 2070. Because any given day solar energy becomes a very, very important factor in you reaching the carbon neutrality by 2070. So that fact can be written here. Next. 7th question, again most expected because severe tsunami along the regions of Russia and Japan that you see. What are tsunamis? That's one part. How and where are they formed? How and where are they formed? What are their consequences, and explain with the examples. Now, the question is very basic. You would define what is tsunami again. When you look at this, you would define what is tsunami. Tsunami is the high waves. You can talk about soupless tsunami. And then talk about, in general, you can show the world map representing the regions of tsunami. World map representing the regions of tsunami. Right? Because most of the times you see either it is in Indian Ocean or either it is in Pacific Ocean. Most of the times that you see, the tsunamis are present. And then, how and where are they formed? That means the reasons. Whenever you are writing the reasons for tsunami, you can see it could be either certain natural factors or certain anthropogenic factors. Very simple. Whenever you see that underwater there is a release of energy, this energy is of a higher degree and higher order. Automatically what happens is, whenever there is underwater energy which is released, you see that this energy is seen to be translating into waves, and these are of great heights, and these are of great heights, and this is what is seen to be turning into tsunami. Those are of great heights, and that is what is seen to be turning into tsunami. So discuss about the formation and definitely consequences. You don't have to add anything in the consequence, because any disaster will result in what? Disease, disability, destruction, displacement, developmental reversal, displacement, destruction, disability, disease. All of these are seen to be present as a consequence of disaster. You can show that 6D effect with respect to disaster. Never ever forget to talk about the measures here. Please don't forget, because it's a disaster. It's talking about geophysical phenomena. Discuss about the measures. And you see, you can conclude with a rhymes project. Or if not that, you can talk about the disaster resilience as a policy way ahead with respect to a Sendai framework in management of disasters. Or you can talk about the Japanese model of tsunami wall. The Japanese model of tsunami wall, which is categorically shielding. It is more of a structural mechanism which is put in by Japan. So that can be concluded. And that's an easy, simple, straightforward question which was asked. Now getting into the 15 markers. In fact, 14th question is little tricky. When you see 14th question, it is talking about the geographical explanation of distribution of offshore oil reserves and how are they different from onshore and offshore they are asking. So again this is a tough question because most of us are aware about offshore but some of us are not very aware about the onshore because we know it's a 15 marker. Now here straight away talk about what are offshore oil reserves. You know, if this is the land, then if this is the water, whatever we get here is offshore. Whatever we find it here, it is onshore. That's a simple understanding of onshore and offshore. So talk about the understanding of offshore oil reserves. And once you discuss about the offshore oil reserves, then you can definitely show a world map representation and mostly you can show the OPEC countries. Mostly you can show the OPEC countries with respect to the world map representation. And once you talk about this world map representation, OPEC countries, then come into the picture, then talk about the geographical explanation of offshore. Now most of the time we see it is seen to be existing in continental shelf. Most of the time you see it is seen to be existing in confined rock structures underwater. So talk about the mechanism, explanation. And then once you talk about that, you talk about the offshore versus onshore oil reserves. Now on what all basis you can show this difference? One, the basis of origin, how are they different? The basis of extraction, how are they different? Right? The ease and cost of extraction. 4, which is more polluting in nature. And 5, mostly the region of occurrence. Mostly the region of occurrence. Right? And once you talk about that, straight away talk about the significance. Significance of these oil reserves. Any given day you see energy security. You can talk about energy independence. You can talk about optimizing of your forex, import bill. So discuss about the significance, the industrial activity, the raw material, inflation, all of those. And straight away conclude. What is the conclusion? That talk about the sustainable mining, and not only sustainable mining but also you see talk about the oil alternatives, because any given day oil extraction is energy intensive, not only energy intensive but is also highly polluting in nature. So that is another very very important dimension that has to be understood. Next, 15th question. It's a tough question because most of us are not very aware, although we are aware about AI and drones, but we are not very aware about GIS and RS, Geographical Information System, and the remote sensing techniques. The reason many people were asking me, sir, why did this question come? Because we have this geospatial data policy coming into the picture. Now when we see this geospatial data policy coming into the picture, all of these become very very important, and in that particular policy there was a specific section which was allocated to locational and aerial planning. Now in this particular section, what are you supposed to remember? Again, you please understand, it is majorly focused upon talking about urban planning, because when you look at the tone of the question, that is what is the tone of the question, you see, you introduce by talking about what is GIS and what is remote sensing. And in general, this is meant for understanding the spatial, the temporal, the raster, right, the sequential, all of this information is being brought from the GIS and remote sensing. You can simply show a diagrammatic representation of the principle of remote sensing that is seen to be existing. Simple diagrammatic representation, because you see all of your remote sensing works on the principle of reflectance. How much is being reflected, how much is being sensed, and what is the fundamental understanding there. So you can show that. Then straight away talk about AI and drones application in spatial and planning. Now we talk about this planning. You please understand, you would talk about land planning, you would talk about environmental planning, you would talk about the population or migratory planning, or you can also say the habitat planning. You can talk about the water planning, right? You can talk about the climate. You can talk about the disaster. So because whenever they are talking about any particular area or land, all these. Now that means if you observe, the more acquainted you are with the dimensions of, the more acquainted with the components that you see, the more ease of writing is what is present. And you should be able to understand this component analysis. From the question 1 of geography, I have been talking about this component analysis. And you will be happily able to manage this answer by having this component analysis and talking about AI and drone. Because what is AI categorically doing? It is enabling you to process the data, collect the data, collate the data, rectify the data, interpret the data. All of this is what is being done by artificial intelligence. What is drone doing? Drone fundamentally is enabling you to understand what is happening in remote areas, the data in the remote areas, and automatically based on the data you would have planning. So that is the simple analysis that you have to have. Thinking in this manner in the exam hall is the key. You do it, you're there. You don't do it, you will have to leave such question thinking it's a tough question. Next. 16th question. Now they are asking about how the changes in the shape and the size of the continents and ocean basins taking place due to the tectonic movements of crustal masses. Now when they say crustal masses, they are categorically talking about the tectonic plates. And when they are talking about tectonic movements, they are categorically talking about the plate interactions which have been happening. Again, one of the most repeated questions in GS-1 is this. Now, when you look at this particular question, in general, you look at the page alignment, it's easy. You see, you talk about what is happening with the plate tectonics, right? You talk about what is happening with plate tectonics. Here, you simply show a diagram, because whenever you see the plate interactions and whenever you see the crustal masses moving, you see there are 3 kinds of interactions. One is convergent, divergent, transform. Convergent could be what? Again 3. Continental plate, continental plate, continental plate, oceanic plate, oceanic plate, oceanic plate. Continental plate is resulting in fold mountains. Continental plate, oceanic plate is resulting in subduction. Oceanic plate is resulting in island arcs. Give one example for this. The divergent interaction would have some kind of constructive activity which is going on, mostly the volcanic eruption which is seen to be existing. And when you look at the transform interaction, you see that in the context of transform interaction that is existing, you would fundamentally understand that this is more of a sliding action or the shearing action which is existing, and this has a lot of relation with the earthquakes. And you will have to categorically talk about how are these plate interactions shaping your continents, shaping your oceans. Because a volcanic eruption could result in some minor relief features of the oceans, could also result in the spreading of the floor. In a continental aspect, could fundamentally result in the epirogenic aspects as well as the orogenic aspects here. So that is what is talking about majorly the geomorphic movements, which is talking about the diastrophic movements as well as the sudden movements and these relation with the plate interaction. Very conceptual question in the context of geography and core geography question, right? I think you can beautifully write if you have this understanding, because any basic understanding of geomorphology will give you this. Coming to the last question, that is, discuss the distribution on the density of population in Ganga river basin with special reference to land, soil and water. They are categorically asking. Again, it's a physiographic question. This year we had 2 questions on physiography. Now, simple representation that you can show here is, What is the characteristic feature of northern plain? You see, the characteristic feature of northern plain is it is characterized with Himalayan rivers. It is characterized with alluvial plains. And automatically what is happening? It has its own economic significance, it has its own ecological significance, it has its own social significance. That is what they have asked with respect to land, water, land and soil is the same. And they are trying to link this with population. They are trying to link this with population. So you see, majorly what is seen to be happening, you look at the population density. This is known for large density. Not only density, but you also look at the settlements. Not only the settlements, but also you look at the human development indicators which are existing in this region. And you see, all of this is fundamentally affected by the northern plains as a physiography. You look at the transport mechanism, you look at the national waterways which are existing. So what is seen, the basic understanding of any answer writing is, it is easy, you know the components. If you don't know the components, again, it's going to be tough. Now, because all of the content you know, my dear. In answer writing, the content is known, but the problem is contextualizing of the content that you know according to the asked question. And if you are able to do that contextualization of the asked question, or the contextualization of the content according to the asked question, you are very good to go to write an answer. And answer writing is not tough, it is easy provided you have these structures, provided you have these components, provided you have this broader understanding. It's going to take you along this process of answer writing. Ensure that you are practicing PYQs because most of these questions are repeated. That is it from my side for geography for GS-1 Mains 2025. Thank you.
Hello students, today we will be discussing Indian society part from GS-1 paper of this year. So first we'll try to understand key takeaways from the paper here. First takeaway is that this year the paper was little unconventional. You cannot just depend upon your static part, but also there has to be a connection with other subjects also. Like this year, there was a question which was related to poverty, but with environmental sustainability. So it's kind of a connection between the GS3 paper also and GS1 also. Secondly, the questions were 6 in nature, few were 10 markers and few were 15 markers. So the total number of questions which are coming from society is more and less, it has been maintained. Thirdly, the society paper here needed lot of examples to be given as given in the keywords in the paper. So now with these 6 questions, we will try to understand how the questions have to be structured mainly. Because questions at the end of the day, it's more about how you structure the content, right? Not just about the content. Obviously, you'll have to convey your answer through the content, but that's not the only thing which is important. Important thing is how you structure it, how there is a flow in your content, how the content which you are writing, it is relevant with respect to demand of the question. That is very important. If you're writing answers which are not related to what they have asked, you have just written what you know, you will not get marks, right? So we'll go through it. And one peculiar thing this year was that one question which is more or less like an ethics question about civil service has also come. As we move on to that question, we'll see how they have done a connection with the Indian society part, right? So let's get into the discussion. So first question was with respect to the smart cities mission. So this topic has come from your urbanization chapter, the topic of urbanization. Secondly, they have included a recent scheme about that. That is smart cities mission, and then concept of urban poverty and distributive justice. So these are the 4 components. Introduction in this will start by you giving a little context about how Smart Cities mission was launched in 2015 with an aim of your inclusive development and to address issues related to urbanization like, and you can connect it with the question like poverty as well as your distributive justice. right? So the introduction has to be with respect to the question which has been asked. You can define it here. Definition is not possible because there are too many keywords. So you give just a context about that particular topic. Now, in the body of the answer, you will first discuss how has Smart City Mission addressed the issue of poverty. Then second will be with respect to distributive justice. So your body of your answer will be in two parts. So with respect to urban poverty, affordable housing, slum upgradation has happened. You can give examples like in Indore, MOU signed in 2025 that focuses on net zero housing for BPL families. This is under the domain of Smart City Mission. So your answer should have specific points followed by certain examples. And first you talk about poverty, then livelihood support management through your waste management, digital access to services, and smart health and education. All these features of Smart City Mission addressed the issue of urban poverty. Right? Now here, if you want to make answer more specific, you can add on data with respect to urban poverty in India. Now you will move on to the next part where you will write distributive justice. Don't mix up two components of an answer. Discuss poverty separately, discuss distributive justice separately. Distributive justice means whatever are the fruits of the development, they are being distributed with equality, irrespective of your class, caste, gender, creed, race, etc. This is being distributed equally. Now, what has happened with your Smart City Mission? Equitable energy, infrastructure and mobility has happened for all sections of society. Digital governance and citizen empowerment has happened. Now, anyone can access the governance services, the laws. You can know about the laws, policies, which are schemes which are beneficial to you through a digital component. So information symmetry has come in. It doesn't matter you're poor, you're rich, you can access information. So that has also led to empowerment and distributive justice. The next part is that it led to inclusive green infrastructure. Again, a component of distributive justice. How? Because it's emphasis on waste to energy, green development, which supports environmental justice, and it is irrespective of to which section do you belong. So this question will have these two parts. You have to discuss how Smart City Mission specifically addressed these issues, right? Then you can write certain challenges also. Financial devolution has not been proper, deadlines have been not met properly, right? Then, when we're talking about slum upgradation has happened, but again without rehabilitation. What about the livelihoods? So certain challenges to make the answer more balanced in nature, and then you conclude it that despite a certain drawbacks, there has been widespread success of this Smart City Mission with respect to addressing poverty and your distributive justice, and like this you end your answer. Now moving on to the next question. Next question, like I was talking about, it is about civil service. Ethos of civil service in India stand for combination of professionalism and nationalistic consciousness. Now, obviously, everyone is confused why they have asked a GS-4 question in Indian society. So you can take it more like, when we're talking about civil services in India, it originated during the colonial times, right? And we usually, whenever we study any social problem, any social issue, we usually go to the historical part. So probably that aspect of Indian society they want to check. Plus, when it is talking about nationalistic consciousness, so it wants you to write about the nation building process. So this is, although a little far-fetched, I would agree, but still they have tried to ask this question in GS-1. Now, key lesson here is no paper is isolated in nature, that you cover only GS-1 and your knowledge about the other paper is less. So you're not able to attempt that question. Any question can come up. right? Even environmental sustainability question has come up in this year in GS-1, right? Some GS-2 societal aspect can come in your environmental aspect also, in that GS-3 paper also. So be ready. So because they are adopting a multidisciplinary approach in the papers, they are integrating the papers more. They want a more widespread knowledge, how you can integrate these things, because in real life, problems would not be separated into GS1, GS2, GS3, GS4. They will be combined. So questions reflect that very thing. Okay, coming back. So civil services in India, you can start by telling that it's the steel framework of the governance, right? It started during the colonial times, and you can quote Vallabhbhai Patel also, where he called it as a steel framework of the governance, right? How its impartiality and integrity is very important. So anyway, court-based start can also be there, or general context about civil services can be there. Now the question is there that civil services has to be a combination of professionalism and nationalistic consciousness. So it means your answer will be divided into two parts. Again, like the previous question. First, you have to discuss the professionalism in civil services. So here you can take a cue from Nolan Committee, which we do in GS4. You don't need to label it as Nolan Committee. Generally, you can talk about integrity, objectivity, openness, efficiency, right? And you can give specific examples that how ethos, basic principles of civil services, they focus on professionalism. And second, with respect to nationalistic consciousness, right? So how do they contribute to this nationalistic consciousness? Through upholding the constitutional values of liberty, equality, fraternity, secularism, right? Then try to further the concept of your inclusive growth, right? Then protection of the vulnerable section. So like this, they are contributing in the national consciousness. They're contributing towards the nation building. Then they promote social harmony also, right? You can give an example in conflict prone areas, civil servants promote peace. Example in Manipur, which happened. So the first line, defense against any disruption in social harmony is via the civil servants. So that is how they, contribute to the national consciousness. So this points will be in your second part. So divide it properly. Structure is very important. If you combine both the things, points will be very generic and confusing in nature. Examiner will be confused whether you're talking about professionalism or you're talking about national consciousness. So divide them properly, like we did in the previous question. Poverty was discussed separately and the distributive justice was discussed separately, right? And after that, you conclude it that when we're talking about civil services, paramount importance is for these two factors, but there are other aspects with respect to legality, with respect to transparency of the overall governance process that you can add in the conclusion part. Then next question is, do you think globalization, it was a question, now this, it was a direct question, now this is doable, right? We always do the globalization and Indian society part very nicely. So here they have tried asking you about the globalization and aggressive consumer culture. Right? So first, introduction will be you define globalization. Right? That's the key word here. How do you think globalization results only in an aggressive consumer culture? Justify your answer. Right? So also see, they are asking, do you think? And the one word is only. So it means the question will be in two parts, where you will first tell that yes, it has led to aggressive consumer culture, But secondly, you will say that's not the only impact of globalization, right? So two parts you have to discuss to make the answer balanced in nature. So the first part is introduction, where you will say globalization is a process which leads to increased interconnectedness, integration, and interdependence of societies as well as economies. So a proper definition of your globalization has to be written at the start. Then the next part will be, you will discuss first part of the question, that yes, globalization leads to aggressive consumer culture. How does it does that? Through advertisements, through social media posts. Today social media influencers, what they are doing, they are kind of advocating, encouraging aggressive consumer culture. Today they will tell you this shampoo is the best, next day they will tell this another shampoo is the best, tomorrow they'll bring up some other product. They influence it. Why? Because they have a platform, which is due to globalization process, right? And then, even if any influencer is there in abroad or some actor is there, he, you know, is a brand ambassador of something, that encourages you to buy, right? Different advertisements through social media. Globalization at all times is trying to, encourage that you spend more, right? You consume more. Then it also leads to credit based lifestyle. So through globalization, the economic system has expanded. So many banking systems, so many financial systems have come up, right? So for example, there is one app known as Lazy Pay, where you can buy now, pay later, or you can pay it in installment or take a loan for it, right? So even if you cannot afford right now, or if you cannot afford to give the whole amount at one place, still you can buy it. So again, it is promoting that consumer culture. Then fast fashion, like Zara, H&M, right? Where the fashion trends, they change so quickly that after 3 months, that fashion is redundant. You buy something else. So it is opposite to the slow fashion, which focuses on the sustainability of the clothes, durability of the clothes, longevity of the clothes. But here it is fast fashion. After every 3 months, products change, fashion changes. So this will lead to aggressive consumer culture. Now, on the second part, you will discuss that there are certain positive dimensions also. Globalization has also resulted in a worldwide environmental movements also, which is getting spreaded through the process of globalization. If we're talking about Greta Thunberg or any environmentalist, how do we know about it in India also? How her ideas are coming? Because we are not an isolated society, we are a combined society, right? So there is a positive aspect also. And then the same globalization process through media, through advertising, it is also promoting minimalistic lifestyle also. Not just the consumer lifestyle. There are social media influencers which focus on minimalism, living with zero waste, encouraging living a life which is not based on fast fashion. So there is a positive aspect also, where yes, it promotes the consumer culture, aggressive consumer culture, but also it helps in moving away from that culture. So a balanced answer. Then you will write down the answer's conclusion, where you say that globalization is not a one-dimensional force of consumerism. There are aggressive consumption patterns, but if taken care, if controlled, right? If this aggressive advertisement is stopped and consumers are more targeted and information based, then we can control this particular aspect, right? So this is about the globalization. Then next is a very generic common sense kind of answer. How do you account for growing fast food industries, given that they are increasing, there are increased health concerns in modern society? Illustrate your answer along with Indian experience, right? So it's trying to say that in the society there is a paradox, right? Two opposing things, that on one side fast food industry is increasing, and on the other side health concerns they are increasing. Today, the burden of non-communicable diseases, lifestyle diseases is much more than the communicable diseases, but still the fast food industry is growing by leaps and bounds, right? So you first have to write down why there is a growth of fast food industry, because we are living in times where the life is very fast, urbanized life. You don't have time. So you focus on ready to eat foods or even certain ready to make foods also. You don't have time to do elaborate cooking. So that is why these urban middle class families, the consumption of fast food is increasing. Then platforms selling or delivering these, because if you see the traditional last 10 years, if you see, fast food consumption used to be usually there is a special event, somebody is getting married or somebody's birthday is there, or you go on weekend, right? Then you used to have, the outside fast food. But now delivery apps, you can have it at any time, any place, right? And from any food outlet near your area. So the accessibility has also increased. Not just our life has changed, accessibility to these fast food chain has increased. Then advertisement, aggressive advertisement, that this is a good food, this makes you feel happy, right? Or using certain ambassadors, they try to persuade and influence you that this is very good food, right? So these are certain, reasons why fast food industry is increasing, despite that there are certain lifestyle diseases which are emerging. And another aspect is, you might have also seen healthy food is expensive, fast food is inexpensive. 50 rupees you can get a fast food, you can get probably a plate of noodles, but for 50 rupees healthy food is not possible. So because of affordability also, this is having an increased consumption. Then you write another part of the answer where you tell that what are the health concerns, lifestyle diseases, cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, right? So cholesterol increase. So these are some of the health concerns, rising obesity also. So these things, then malnutrition also. So these concepts you write down after you're done with why there is increase in fast food. Then you conclude your answer and write down that, there has to be a awareness program by the government. Proper hygiene standards should be there, right? There are certain products which are used in the fast food chains like palm oil, corn syrups, they should be banned. So even if you are frying the French fries, they should be done in a healthier alternative probably, right? So awareness program by the government has to be started, right? Lifestyle change has to be, encouraged in the citizens. Then proper labeling of the fast food is very important. Health warnings should be included so that the consumption level can be discouraged in your citizens, right? So this is another aspect. Then next question is, achieving sustainable growth with emphasis on environmental protection could come into conflict with poor people's need in a country like India. So it's saying, so now it's a combination of, like I was telling you, it's combination about sustainable development and poverty. Now in sustainable development, the definition is that you consume consciously, you take care of the environment, you have to preserve the resources so that it is available for the next generation also. That is sustainable development. There's a quote also which says that you have borrowed the earth, you have taken this resources, the earth, on lease from the future generation. You are not owning it, right? You have just rented it or leased out from, you have to pass them on. Clean air, different natural resources, river water should be clean. So that is sustainable development. Now, this usually comes in conflict with the poor people's need. Say for example, poor people, they have dependence on natural resources, right? they use cheaper alternatives like kerosene, right? Which is more cheaper in nature. They cannot install solar panels or they cannot use your wind energy in their homes. So there is a kind of a conflict, affordable energy versus clean energy, right? Then when it is about, when we're talking about sustainable development, we also talk about maintaining the groundwater. Contamination should not be there, land resources should be used judiciously. But poor people, they cannot afford housing, they cannot afford proper sanitation. So slum development is there, which is a sign of a problem in urbanization process. So there is again a conflict between them, right? Then regulation and costs of living sustainably, it is very high. Poor people cannot afford it. So because of these reasons, there is a conflict. Now, to make the answer balanced in nature, you can give a way forward. What can be the solution to this problem? How can you reconcile it? You need to have inclusive green schemes have to be there. Reduce the dependence upon kerosene, biomass in poor people. Subsidies and loans can be given for adoption of cleaner energy. A transition framework can be formulated, right? So with this, we will include the people and will make the transition to sustainable development more easier and affordable for the poor people. Now the last question in the paper was about tribal population. So the question is, does tribal development in India center around two axes, displacement and rehabilitation? So they are saying that when we are talking about tribal development, in India, we focus on two problems. One is their displacement. Why? Because all the developmental projects like dams, mining, industrial setup, they're all being done in resource rich area, and who lives mostly in the resource rich areas? Tribal people. So they have to be displaced, and a related aspect is rehabilitation, that we have to rehabilitate them also because they have lost their generational land, they have lost their livelihood. So question is asking, mostly it is centered around these two. So the structure of answer is, first you will say yes, displacement is a major issue, rehabilitation is a major issue. Then comes the third part where you will give a balanced perspective to it, that it is not just about displacement and rehabilitation, it is also about protection of their rights, their autonomy, cultural preservation, education, health. So it's these two issues are important. Displacement is one of the big issue, like I told you, for mining projects, for dams, right? So this is a major aspect, but not the only issue with them. Similarly, rehabilitation of them, right? Job wise, right? Or fair compensation to them, or with respect to the Forest Right Act, right? That is one axis of developmental issues with tribal people, but that is not the only issue. And you have to include it in the third part about these other issues. And then you conclude the answer. So answer always has to be balanced in nature. What is asked in the question, obviously that's taken for granted, that needs to be answered. But the other aspect is you have to also explore very briefly the other aspect to it. When it is talking about development and displacement, you discuss that and then you give the opposite aspect of that. When they are asking about your fast food and your, they are asking about globalization and aggressive consumer culture. So first you say, yes, it is leading to aggressive consumer culture, but you give the opposite side also, that it is leading to spread of environmental movements, awareness, encouraging of minimalistic lifestyle. So your structure is very important, where you start your answer with introduction, which can be definition based, which can be current affair based, or you can give just a context, or you can write data. Then when you are writing body of the answer, you have to divide answer in the keywords. Divide answer according to the keywords. Answer has to be balanced in nature. They're asking, not asking doesn't matter. Try writing in points and with subheadings. And always end answer with a conclusion where you can either summarize or you can write about the way forward. Right? So question paper has been little unconventional, but the good thing about unconventional question is it's same for everyone. It tests your common sense. It tests your general knowledge about it, your general perception about the society. Now, fast food topic is not something which we do in the class. Or when we're talking about aggressive consumer culture, at some level, yes, we do. We talk about globalization and capitalism. But these kind of questions, they test your common sense. They are more easier to attempt. There is no theory involved in here. You don't have to learn certain facts. Just use your common sense. Just think about the society in which you live in and try to attempt these questions. So that's all from my side. Thank you so much.
Welcome to History part discussion in GS paper 1. In this video, we will see what are the questions asked and what are the major themes covered under this paper. Initially, this year paper is, I would consider it as easy to moderate. I would place it is on easy side. Why? Because mostly questions were asked from expected topics and easy to interpret also. Last year there was one question with regard to balance of power. That question was considered as tough. Such type of questions were not there in this paper. So everyone can write something for every question. So I consider it as easy. But when questions are easy, presentation plays key role. Who presents answers in a better way, they will get more score because more or less everyone will have same content. So here, more than content, your skills of answer writing is important. Hence, you need proper guidance. At the same time, these questions are on expected lines, but to expect those questions, you need thorough PYQ analysis and proper guidance. Generally, in history paper, they would focus on any period or dynasty based. For example, last year they focused on Vedic case. They focused on Cholas, Pallavas. Like that, they focused on particular race or dynasty, or they would focus on ruler based. Earlier they asked Sri Krishna Devaraya. This year they asked Akbar. Next year they may ask about Ashoka. They won't focus on political aspects of Akbar or Sri Krishna Devaraya or Ashoka. They would link that famous ruler with cultural contributions. One year they have asked about Sri Krishna Devaraya cultural contributions. Similarly, next year they may ask about Ashoka's cultural contribution because he contributed immensely to art and architecture. Another thing is specifically with respect to art and architecture. One year they have asked about dance, Tandava dance, and there they have asked about rock cut architecture. Another year they have asked about Gandhara Madura sculpture. This year they have asked about sub-school. See, here focus is not only about major schools, Nagara, Dravida, Visara. Now they are going into deep. Chandala school is one subset of Nagara architecture. In that also they have focused mainly ornamentation, that is sculpture in Chandala art form. So slowly, as this pattern is started in 2013, slowly they are touching gray areas also, subtopics also. So this year they have asked about Chandala art form. Next year they may ask about Hoysala architecture, that is part of Western style. Or they may ask about Odisha school, that is one sub school of Nagara architecture. Like that we have to prepare in a systematic and structured way. And socio-religious reform movement, famous topic for UPSC. This year also in August 15th speech, Honorable Prime Minister mentioned about Mahatma Jyotirao Phule, because in 2027, 200 years of birth anniversary of Phule will be celebrated. Hence, it is in current affairs. Even it is most expected question because the focus is about subaltern. Here, subaltern is optional word. Till now, we consider it as optional word, subaltern. But in GS itself, UPSC asked about subaltern classes. So next year they may ask about B.R. Ambedkar. So focusing on last year they have asked about tribals. So they every year they are focusing on subalterns, not only mainstream national movement, they are also focusing on subalterns. Similarly, post independence, it is easier question if you know conceptual understanding. Even world history also it is easy because in world history we read about revolutions, that may be scientific revolution or intellectual revolution or political revolutions like American Revolution, French Revolution, Russian Revolution, Chinese Revolution, or Industrial Revolution. Because of these revolutions, there are many good things happened, but there are many bad things also happened. One such bad thing is colonization. When colonization happened, it led to world wars also. Because of world wars, these powers weakened. It also led to decolonization. So in this systematic manner, every year UPSC is asking one question from world history. So world history syllabus is vast. You need to focus on major areas. For that, you need to read syllabus. I often observe students, they jump into content without reading syllabus paper. So one should go through syllabus, one should map PYQs with respective syllabus. And another theme in history in GS1 is they take one topic and they link with contemporary world. They link with contemporary world. 1 year they have asked how IVC, Harappa culture is relevant to contemporary world. So they may take any how Buddha is relevant to current world. Like that, how Mahavira is relevant to current world. So they take one topic and they will link with contemporary world. Even IVC is also most expected because of IVC script. Tamil Nadu government award for deciphering IVC script. Even without knowing that current affairs also, it is like ABCD in history reading, even about Akbar also. Only students may face difficult with this Chandela art form. Even no need to worry, because for any sculpture you will write same kind of points. So for that you need to prepare some kind of templates. Whether you read about Chandela or not, at the end in examination you will write some generic points. That generic points constitutes answer for this question. Now we will see each question. Salient features of Harappa architecture. It is the most easiest question and most expected question. Here you need to focus on urban planning, their sanitation, water management, their granaries, like that you have to focus. And most important thing is everyone knows answer for this. So you need to impress examiner with some more efforts. Those efforts are diagrams. See, for example, this is urban planning. In history, you need to use subheadings. You need to use sub diagrams. Third, in GS, every subject requires some kind of uniqueness, whether it may be economy, whether it may be polity, whether it may be history. You need to use technical terms. For example, in history answer writing, you need to use time period, if you remember. Otherwise, at least centuries, approximate centuries. Second, you need to mention sources, whether it may be literary sources or archaeological sources. Third one, you need to mention places and persons. Places and persons. Then only it will look like history answer. So it will create some kind of difference with ordinary paper and extraordinary paper. For that you need to do these extra things. You need to draw this diagram. See, this is citadel, this is lower area, and this is great bath, granaries, water management in Dolavera. See, for example, you need to put side heading water management, under which you need to mention Dolavera. Urban planning, you need to draw this grid pattern, and you need to demarcate citadel area with lower town. Even you can put one river here, because most of the cities are on river banks. Then you need to box it. So it will look like authentic. You have read and you are presenting it. It will fetch half mark. If you score half mark extra in every question, 20 questions, 10 marks, 7 papers, 70 marks. So it will create huge impact, because interview is unpredictable. Predictable. 1 year you may score 200 plus. Another year, if you go to different board, you may score 140. So you cannot rely on interview. You have to rely on mains. So you need to focus. You need to focus on mains answer writing, especially presentation. You need to use side headings like urban planning and grid pattern. Proper side heading, crisp and clear words. And most importantly, if you don't use side heading, at least bring those keywords to the front. I observe some students writing like 2-3 lines. At the end they use keywords. Examiner will not be having interest to read all these 3 lines. So bring these keywords at the beginning and finish one point in 1.5 line, at max 2 lines. Don't drag, don't beat around bush. So you need to write about urban planning, grid pattern, standardized bricks, drainage system. Here you need to mention about how they use drainage system. They use soak pits. They used to clean regularly, and they had private bathroom also. Every house was linked to street drains. So they were aware of public health and sanitation and buildings. Their rooms were constructed around central courtyard. Whenever you write these kind of points, try to underline it. And doors were not open to main streets because of fear of dust. For example, this is road. They used to put roads this side. So to prevent dust entering into their homes. Even they constructed 2 or multi-storied structures. Even public buildings, monumental architecture like granaries, great granary at Mohenjo-daro, granaries at Harappa, and great bath at Mohenjo-daro. And fortifications and town planning also. Even in town planning, you can write exceptions. For example, Dolavera has 3 towns. You need to bring these exceptions. You need to underline it. And special structures, for example, dockyard at Lothal, workshops at craft production, where Chanudaro is known for bead making, and water management, wells and reservoirs. You need to distinguish. One is they obstructed rivers and they started bringing water from river to their fields. That is one aspect. Second aspect is they conserved water also. Because they lived in semi-arid region, water conservation is essential. Even they use hydraulic engineering. There is a place called Alhadino. They used hydraulic engineering. They dug wells with small breadth. With hydraulic pressure, water used to come like this. If you could draw these kind of diagrams, you will get maximum marks. Because history is like a opener, Rohit Sharma and Virendra Sehwag. You need to score more. Because it will send good impression about you to the examiner. Secondly, it will give confidence, because in GS you would start with history answer writing. If you write 2-3 good questions in history, your confidence will go high. Later you will not bother about other questions. So confidence is key. Whenever you write any exam with confidence, there will be clarity in your answer writing. You won't beat around the bush. you will deliver content with good keywords. So you need to end with conclusion. Even Akbar releases syncretism. Syncretism means, syncretism means mix of two cultures. Mix of two culture. You need to write about Akbar the Great, if possible time period. No need, if you don't remember, no need. You need to mention not only known for his territorial expansion, but also known for his liberal attitude and religious policies. Therefore, in multi-religious, multi-ethnic, multi-cultural society, you could rule peacefully. You could rule peacefully. When this wisdom is lost, Aurangzeb faced many revolts. You need to connect at the conclusion. So it was not only his attitude, it was political necessity. Any prudent ruler would bring religious syncretism when multi-religious society exists. What are the main aspects? You would start with Ibadat Khana. Ibadat Khani started to know about different aspects of religion. It widened. Akbar was illiterate. He could not read. So he listened to the sages. He listened to the religious persons. For initially he started with Islam scholars. Then he invited other scholars also. It widened his thinking about religion. And sul-equal policy, peace with all. Here I have given more points for your better understanding, but you need to write these kind of points only. Peace with all. It provided framework for all policies. His religious policy, Deccan policy, all based on this concept called sul-equal, peace with all. That's why you could bring Rajputs into his rule. He integrated Rajputs into his administration, military administration. For example, Birbal and Man Singh, all these people. So that is broadly guided by sul-equal policy. Even Deen-i Ilahi, it was one kind of syncretic religious movement. It brought all good things from different religions. For example, one God, monotheism, and veneration to sun and fire from Zoroastrianism, ethical principles like non-violence from Jainism, rejection of rigid orthodoxy. So he also started Din-i-Ilahi, and he abolished discriminatory practices like pilgrimage taxes, jizya tax, and he involved in interfaith marriage. He married many Rajput families. That's why he tapped the potential of Rajputs, especially Kachwa dynasty. Man Singh, his son Ram Singh, etc. Translation of many religious texts. Famous one, Mahabharata, Rajmanama. At least you need to mention one work. And Mahazarnama. Mahazarnama is a declaration where he declared himself as Imam-e-Adil, means supreme with respect to interpretation of Sharia. So he removed influence of clergy, Islamic clergy, Orthodox ulamas from involvement into political aspects. As a result, Indo-Islamic architecture flourished. Art and architecture, you can see in Sikri, Fatehpur Sikri, there are many buildings which has both Persian and Indian influences. Even festivals like Nowruz were celebrated. Because of these reasons, he could rule from 1526 to 1605 peacefully without much disturbances. However, there are few minor disturbances, but by and large there are less disturbances. Even he tapped the potential of Rajputs and other Hindu rulers. He could expand till Kabul, Kandahar region also. However, you can write limitations because it is examination question. You can write limitations also. Initially he was orthodox. You could see that in siege of Chittor. Secondly, even many orthodox criticized Akbar. Even they revolted. They revolted against Akbar. Mirza Hakim, half brother of Akbar, revolted against Akbar. So there are some limitations. Even his policies were not continued by his successor, especially Aurangzeb. Because of that, that broad tolerance policy replaced with conservative policies of Aurangzeb, it led to the decline of Mughals. However, he created syncretic culture which can be seen in different aspects. You need to end like that. And even this Chandala art form, here you need to understand these meaning of these two words, resilient vigor and breadth of life. Even if you could not understand, don't worry. You have to write general points. You have to write general points. So these general points are common to any sculpture, whether it may be about Cholas, whether it may be about Vijayanagara. In future, they may ask some unknown topic, but points would be same. Points would be same. What does it mean? Resilient vigor and breadth of life. Resilient vigor means images are not only static, images are dynamic. Images are dynamic, not lifeless. They are lively. They are conveying some emotions. They are representing some activity. So that is resilient vigor. Not like any static images. They are dynamic, vibrant. They express energy, movement. And breadth of life means as these are associated with the temples, you know which temples? Khajuraho temples. This is famous Khajuraho Kandera Mahadev temple. Even though they associated with the temple, along with religious aspects, they also reflected mundane aspects, day to day activities. Along with gods, they also represented common man. Along with spiritual, they also represented sensual. For example, 10% of the images are erotic images. It reflects kama, desire, as a means to achieve salvation. Even it also reflects tantric worship, popularity of tantric in early medieval period. So they also presented gods, celestial objects, humans, common man, animals. For example, elephants, horses. You can see horses here in these images. So you need to bring these aspects. You need to bring Khajuraho temples. If possible, draw small diagram of Khajuraho temple. As it is not main demand of the question, you should not waste time. In 20 to 30 seconds, you should draw diagram. See these kind of images. Rocks convey some kind of stories. See, images are projecting out of rock. It is like coming out of the rock. So entire rock conveys one story. Here elephant. Even they are very much, this is Tribanga style. They are not just like static. It is conveying one story. Even they are particular about this images, ornaments and everything. So it projected resilient vigor and breadth of life. If you could convey these things, it is enough for 10 marks, because others will fumble to handle this kind of question. In examination, you need confidence, clarity and conviction. If you can't understand these English words, if you know Hindi, please refer Hindi words, because it will be easy to understand. See, it will convey energy and movement, liveliness, instead of stiff and static image. This point is enough. It will convey meaning of question. Not only spiritual, gods, goddess, rituals, but also secular, musicians, warriors, families, erotic sculptures. Normally, many people think that Khajuraho temple is full of erotic sculptures. I have been to the Khajuraho. I have seen that there are less than 10% of images are erotic sculptures. Other images represent gods, common man, musicians, warriors. Many warriors used elephants. If you see friezes in which you can see they convey one story. They represent scenes of everyday life. Everyday life. See, these words are common for any art related question, whether that is Mesolithic art. In Mesolithic art also they convey everyday painting. Even modern also we convey everyday painting. We should have that common sense. Common sense is not so common, but if you could develop common sense, it will improve our answer writing presentation. Skills and detailing. They focus jewelry, hair, expressions, and everything. See, high relief style makes figures look like they are coming out of stone. I have shown this thing. See, on stone they have sculpted. It will look like they are coming out of stone. See these things. And one more thing, in art and architecture, whenever you read about any topic, please go through images. If you see images, you will remember many things. Pictorial representation, we can remember easily. That's why we will remember movies easily when compared to our routine Lakshmikant. Why we forget Lakshmikant frequently? Because Lakshmikant has only text, no images, nothing. So it is very difficult for our mind to remember. So in your class notes, you need to draw diagrams. So in real examination, when question is about the topic, immediately you will refer that image. When that image reflected into your brain, easily you can write that without much work. In fraction of seconds you can write question. So always draw one diagram for every major topic. That diagram is helpful for revision and active recalling in examination. See, the temples designed as many universe, all forms of life. So it reflected full range of society. Full range of society means royalty, commoners, animals, celestial beings like Midunas, celestial beings. So they appear in these images. So like this you have to write answer for this thing. Even if you could write 50% of this content, it is enough, because most of the people, 60 to 70 of the percentage of people fumble. They are scared to attempt these kind of questions. Even Jyotirao Phule, writings and efforts. Easy question if you know facts. Even if you don't know facts also you can manage. Don't leave general questions. Leave questions which are technical in nature. 1 year they have asked about allelopathy. If you don't know about allelopathy, leave about. They have asked about McBride Commission. If you don't know anything about McBride Commission, leave about that. Once they asked about Gandhiji's 7 sins, you cannot write some generic points for 7 sins. Accept those kind of questions. If they ask about general questions, right, attempt those questions. Subaltern classes means downtrodden people, people at the lower strata of the society, masses. For example, peasants, tribal, women, untouchables. So in history, it is subaltern class. If you to improve position of subaltern class, it is GS2 social justice. In social justice topic also, they are focusing about vulnerable sections. In history also, they are focusing about subaltern classes. As subaltern classes are backward, we are focusing on social justice. In polity, they are focusing about, in GS3, they are focusing about inclusive development. Inclusive development. In ethics, they are focusing about compassion. Compassion. See, from same theme, they are asking different aspects. From this theme, every paper you can see one question. Here, role of subaltern. Here, social justice. What constitution is doing to improve subalterns. Here, inclusive growth. Here, compassion. So our ultimate aim is to improve lives of common man. That's why we often use talisman of Gandhiji. Whenever we face any dilemma, we should think about common masses. That should be the guiding light. Guiding light. With respect to Jyotirao Phule, subaltern classes means you need to write his work, how that impacted subaltern class. So you can write about women, you can write about peasants, you can write about Sudras, untouchables. So you need to mention these groups and these works and his activities. If you could link these two things, it will be perfect answer. So he focused on caste oppression, non-Brahminical movement, gender inequality with his wife, famous Savitribai Phule, first woman teacher. They have established school. This is common fact. Everyone knows. Everyone must have read for preliminary. You need to bring that fact. But you need to put side heading for upliftment of women. Right. For caste equality, for elimination of caste, write some points. For peasants, write some points. Use side headings. For example, his writings, Gulamgiri. Gulamgiri means in Telugu also same thing. Slavery. He compared caste oppression with slavery in his book. So to create awareness. Shetkar Asya Asudh. Shetkar means farmer in Marathi. For peasants, he focused on exploitation of landlords, money lenders in Deccan region. So he called for economic justice and dignity of farmers. Truti Ratna means third eye. He focused on how priestly class is manipulating religion and exploiting lower caste. So it is focusing on religious reform also. Sarvajanik Satya Dharma Pustak. Satya Dharma means true religion. Sarvajanik means for all. For all. Pustak means book. So he has written about rational egalitarian religion free from caste and ritual domination. He wanted eradication of caste because he was victim of caste oppression, caste inequalities. Even other reforms such as Sodak Samas, education for marginalized, first school for girls in 1848, along with his wife Savitribai Phule, schools for untouchables, adult education, women empowerment, widow remarriage, opposed child marriage, supported education for girls. So peasants also, he criticized Jamindari system, money launder exploitation. So he also encouraged intercaste unity, rationality and equality. So he became source of inspiration for future leaders. From Maharashtra, another great leader, another stalwart emerged, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. So currently also they are inspiring. So you need to conclude like that. So it is easy question. You need to write his works. If you could not recollect his famous works, at least put side headings like this. Like this. Education for the marginalized, women empowerment, peasants, religious and cultural reform. Even if you don't know, every social reformer would do same kind of things. He fought against inequalities in society. He worked for upliftment of women, marginalized section. Use different words and write. Next question, consolidation process in modern India. Even easy question. Why? Because they only gave side headings: polity, economy, education and international relations. So structuring is also easy. In mains, within time frame, you need to understand meaning, you need to link with syllabus, then you need to structurize, then you need to give value addition. These are 4 essential components, 4 lines of our answer writing. In this question, they only gave side headings. Even question is also easy. So structuring is easy. So you need to write about consolidation. First consolidation, political integration, that is integration of princely states. After that, state reorganization and constitution. First, elections. Largest democratic country, we gave voting rights to everyone, literate, illiterate, poor, rich, male, female. No country ever did like this. No country, even USA, UK, France, they gave voting rights to women. In World War times, interwar period, after World War I, women asserted their rights. They gave voting rights after 1920s. But India gave it one single stroke from commencement of the constitution. That was the greatness and beauty of India. federalism. With respect to federalism, reorganization of states, as country was separated based on religion, another divisive force is language. So many were skeptical. Even Ambedkar, Nehru was skeptical about linguistic reorganization of states. They have appointed first SRC under Fazil Ali Commission. So they carefully created new states. It strengthened unity in diversity. You need to write political integration. When many countries were suffering with secession movements like Pakistan gave rise to Bangladesh, now Balochistan movement, Balkanization in Yugoslavia, but in India we are continuing as one nation because of this consolidation. That consolidation also democratic consolidation. Without any force, we consolidated politically. That's why India became one of the strong nation in world. Economic consolidation. We started planning industrial revolution and community development program. In 1960s, intensive agriculture district program. Later it became as green revolution during Lal Bahadur Shastri period, and later further implemented by Indira Gandhi. However, there are some challenges like food security. We dependent on PL 480. For that only we started green revolution. Even education, universal education goal. We started IITs. We considered them as temples of modern India. Many scientific institutions were established. CSIR. Like that, many institutions were established. International relations. We spearheaded non-alignment movement. Bandung conference. You need to bring those facts. Even we played key role in global conflicts. Korean War. Even we focused on Asian African solidarity. Along with UNO, we focused on decolonization. We took anti-apartheid stance in South Africa. However, the certain setbacks were there. 1962 Sino-Indo War. So, in the first 2 decades, India successfully consolidated. More or less, we sorted out many problems arised because of 200 years of oppressive British rule. Because of this, India emerged as one of the superpower. So that foundation is laid in initial consolidation. French Revolution, most expected question, you need to connect with contemporary world. So in n number of points can be generated in this thing. For example, liberty, equality, fraternity. These were the guiding principles for French revolutions. They challenged monarchy. They created constitutional monarchy. Later it became republic. Now many countries are becoming republic. Many countries are becoming republic. Many countries are trying to become democratic. For example, Arab Spring. Many countries are opposing dominance. Secularism is guiding principle for modern nation states. Popular sovereignty. For example, Arab Spring, many revolutions across world you can see for popular sovereignty or democracy or for republic. Human rights. In France, rights of men and citizen were declared. It became guiding light for Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Even modern Black Lives Matter, Me Too movement, these kind of movements. Nationalism and self-determination. Many regions were fighting for their for example, Kurds movement. Kurds spread across Middle East, in Iraq, in Syria. So they want separate nation. In Balochistan, in Pakistan, Baluch people want their own country. Catalonia in Spain. So many movements are taking place. Secularism is guiding light. Many countries are being influenced because of this thing. Social justice, because French Revolution against feudal privileges. Dalit movements, tribal movements, because these for equality. These movements for equality. In many blueprint for many modern revolutions. For example, in Egypt, Myanmar. Even we can also learn from negatives of French Revolution. For example, reign of terror. Robespierre unleashed reign of terror. From those bitter experiences also we are learning. That's why we are limiting power of government, limiting through various methods like judicial review. Like that, we are rectifying mistakes of reign of terror. Like that, you can write n number of points for this thing. So, friends, these are questions, these answers are indicative. You can generate your own points, but trust me, if you prepare examination in a structured manner, it will help you, it will give clarity. Without clarity, whatever you read, how many hours you spend, it will be useless. So get proper guidance, analyze PYQs, try to remember syllabus, practice. No substitute for practice. And don't look for perfection. I often see students, they are looking for perfection. Overnight you cannot become perfect. Even UPSC is not looking for perfection. UPSC is looking for progress. Every day we should have some kind of progress. That progress will give our desired service, that is IAS. Thank you.